And there we are.
And we're live.
We are live. So happy Friday, Karen. Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday, everyone. Friday the 13th. So,
Yes.
weren't we going to wear witches' hats or something? Didn't we?
Yes. Friday 13th in such a world as we live in.
In such a world as we live in. Can we just acknowledge collective heartbreak and,
yes.
And just because we're about to talk about, work as if it's just another Friday, and we know that there's heavy stuff happening in our world right now, and we want to acknowledge the heaviness of it, and just
yes, at our thoughts and prayers with everybody, and particularly those impacted by the specific areas of heaviness that are happening right now.
I know.
Yeah, it's been a rough week, actually. It's we're all distracted. So, but
we're all distracted. But we are going to focus.
We are
on some interesting topics today. And Lenny, for those of you, listening to us, we do this all week long. We're like throwing things out there, and then on a Friday morning I take it in, or Lenny takes it in, and we say, here's our plan. And I just really want to go back to June of 2022 when you hosted Linda Lomelino from Walmart on our podcast, and you were talking about how Walmart was commercializing their data, because one of the news stories that hit kind of in the last week is that Walmart's president and CEO, John Furner, told Bloomberg that the company can track which of their customers are taking certain drugs, and Ozempic for one of them. So we're talking about kind of weight loss and diabetes care. Anyway, and they are also seeing then a slight pullback in overall basket, less units, slightly less calories. So they are linking their health data, their pharma data, with their shopper insights, and they are sharing that. So one of the articles that was shared with me this week was, should Walmart be data mining your prescriptions? And it gets into this whole idea of data privacy, and Walmart saying it's anonymous, or
anonymized. Yeah.
Anonymized. Thank you very much for the assist. So and as I'm reading it, I'm thinking, well, it's interesting. Is this okay? And I thought, this is actually a really important topic, because is that kind of anonymous data okay to share, or is it privacy infringement? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so if we step back and think, for years, the companies like dunnhumby and IRI, their business was linking in-store retail data to manufacturers. If you're P&G or whoever, you have no idea what's happening at the store. Right. So having that transactional level product information was important. And the same thing would apply within pharma. OTC, that's relatively easy, right? The prescriptions, that's a little more challenging, and it does come down to this anonymity component. And who do we trust with our data? Do you remember? Gosh, this may have been 10 years ago, maybe. It came out that Target was looking at a teenage girl's purchase in the store, and they sent a special offer because she was pregnant. And her parents did not know that, and they got this. Right. Like, why are you getting this pregnancy? These materials for these product offers for pregnancy. Do you remember that? It was like a big deal.
Tiny little thing back here you're triggering, but it's not a solid memory.
Right. Point. It's the same. It's that slippery slope of brands and retailers want to be able to any commercial organization wants to be able to deliver their customers what they need. And the promise of data, big data, analysis and synthesis is that we can do that more effectively. We can anticipate your needs and send you things and enhance your life. But there is this gray area when it comes to health that is a it's a harder thing to get a handle on. There's a pharma company that we're working with right now on the Gen 2 side of the business that is working. They work with a healthcare panel, an opt-in panel, of ailments, and those folks opt in to share their medical records, and it's part of a patient journey project, right? To understand. So the pharma company wants to understand the end users. They have no relationship with them. They can't sell to them directly. They do not sell them directly. So the only way for them to really kind of understand this whole process is through this opt-in approach of sharing medical records and sharing that type of information. And maybe that's where companies like Walmart have to get to in doing this. Maybe that is simply the solution is instead of it, well, it's our data. Well, no, it is the consumers, and it goes into conversations we've been having here for weeks around from the get-go on data privacy and GDPR and all that stuff. I think we have to get to a place in the world where we are the person that creates the data owns the data, and that means the consumer, and they should be involved in understanding exactly how it's used, and they should be compensated for its usage.
I know it feels a little bit, I don't know, I guess that's why the question even comes up, is it feels a little bit shady. Like, if Walmart, for example, is using this data to inform their customers, for example, the Cokes and Pepsis of the world, it feels like they are getting some profitable gain in that, and the consumers are just like, wait, I'm just filling my prescriptions. It just feels like we are too close to an ethical breach, and I don't know. I feel like we have to watch that. And the other part that was really interesting is there was a follow-up article, because I mentioned Coke and Pepsi. Apparently, they've said now their stocks have fallen as a result of this news getting out there. That these weight loss drugs are influencing purchase decisions, and then therefore customers are cutting back on sugary beverages, perhaps, which might all be common sense, but the stock market is influenced on Walmart's decision to link this data, and it just feels a little unnerving that they have that power. I don't know. And you had this podcast episode, so you know all about this, what they're doing. Any other kind of thoughts based on your history, having talked to Linda a year ago, for heaven's sakes, and now what we're seeing?
Well, it's that, they were doing the same thing that Kroger, right? Kroger company, they bought the remnants of what was the dunnhumby business, and they spun that off to a company called 8451. All 84.
I loved working with them, actually. Good.
Yeah, they're super smart, right? And what they were using the loyalty data, right? And if you're used with the a Kroger shopper here in the South, but I know they own other, but that loyalty data is basically the permission to, here's all the things that I bought, and they would utilize that again, because brands have no invisibility to what happens inside the store generally. That's the nature of retail. It's a disintermediation between the manufacturer and the customer. So, in a whole debate over, well, whose customer is it? Are you P&G's customer, or are you Walmart's customer, or are you both? Right. So they're trying to bridge that gap, and Kroger tries to bridge that gap. And again, it goes back to the idea of, well, they want to help brands be more successful, and you get it. Logically, from a business standpoint, it should be a virtuous ecosystem. But to your point, this privacy thing, it's a thorny issue, and in some, we're not there yet in the U.S. Well, we're getting there in California. We're getting there in New York. We're certainly pretty much there already in Europe. This is an issue that it's going to keep coming up, and it's going to be a bigger. Share one more thing that is relevant to this. I actually had a conversation with the head of AI in Asia Pacific for IBM. Shout out to Ross Farrelly, my good friend Ross, and brought up the concerns around, in the era of generative AI, on copyright of content. And that there is a strong argument to be made that is already emerging, that if a specific piece of data or content is used within, let's say, ChatGPT, that produces some other type of value, well, whoever created that should be compensated for it. You can't use a snippet of a song or a video or whatever, right? I mean, there's kind of this Creative Commons, which is a little tiny bit that you can use. And that's it's a connected issue. So, right, data, content, your image, whatever the case may be. To date, we've kind of dealt with that as well. Terms of service, right? You signed up and said we could do whatever we wanted to with your data in return for utilizing this application, the social media platforms. But that may not fly anymore. And we're entering a world where all of this, we're heading straight to having to deal with this entire issue of ownership of information. And the rights that the creators or contributors to that have as owners, and for compensation. So remember Andrew Yang ran his campaign on the idea of the universal basic income on a data annuity. I think those concepts are not far-fetched at all. So we are going straight to that those issues right now.
It's pretty cool to just kind of put it all together that way. So interesting. And we talk a lot about, in the content world, we talk a lot about who owns content, and if if you're getting help with writing, or whatever kind of assist you might be getting through generative AI, like, just be super careful, because it may be pulling from property that somebody else has out there already. So, like, we really have to watch not only our own IP, but we can't just trust at face value that what we're getting back is actually not somebody else's IP.
It's different than search, which is probably a good segue, right? Into,
it is a good segue, right? Because there's some interesting stuff. There's some interesting stuff happening that you shared, which is really confusing to me. So, friends, I'm going to ask Lenny to explain something to me for the first time, because we didn't talk about it first, because he's had a morning of meetings. But he had shared with me an article from AI News that highlighted retrieval augmented generation, RAG, RAG, as a transformative approach to navigating the digital data deluge. So platforms like Microsoft Copilot and Lucy AI, that many of you in the insights industry may be fully aware of, are both powered by RAG. So the idea is it retrieves relevant data and generates kind of contextually accurate responses. So as I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, super important. How is RAG different from generative AI, and why is this news? I'm really confused by this. And so, my go-to was like, all right, I could run downstairs and ask my husband, but he's also so I'm like, all right. So then there's Lenny. Let's go, Lenny. Tell me, what is RAG, and why do we have to get our heads around that? What is different from the AI that we've been really starting to learn a lot about this year?
Well, Tim may be a better technical explainer, so maybe we'll have to do that sometime. Call Tim in for the exchange. But I don't want to minimize it, but it is search on steroids. So I'm not sure that RAG is a new thing. Lucy has been around for quite some time,
right?
We talk about generative AI, but there's kind of summative AI as well, right? And I think that's where this falls, that it is more search was just kind of keyword based, right? Boolean search, Google, those things. You put in the terms and it searches everything, and it matches those words, and it brings you the content that has those search terms in it. That's effectively how it would work. More complicated, but that's the gist. This is taking a little deeper than that, where it's looking for more context of. So if we use the example where in Boolean you search up yogurt, and it's going to bring you a whole bunch of stuff about yogurt that may or may not be exactly what you're looking for. Within RAG, it's more focused. You could say, I want to look for, and this is actually an example from Lucy that they shared with me a long time ago. So shout out Lucy for, this is always the example I go to. Across all the available corpus of content, whether it be video or audio or text, PDF, PowerPoint, whatever it is, find me everything that is talking about my favorite tastes of yogurt and why I like it. So it's very much more specific, and it will explore all of that content and bring you the specific components that are relevant to that detailed request. So it's kind of built into the generative AI, right? So this is RAG is kind of functioning within the part of for the summary component. Then there's the kind of contextual analysis that happens with generative, because you would go off of that now within a chat GPT. Okay, now tell me, what does the market for boysenberry Greek yogurt, which is not my favorite, but
very random.
It just came into my head.
Boysenberry?
Probably a pretty small market for boysenberry Greek yogurt. Anyway, point is, and tell me a persona of who would be the ideal player of that.
Yeah.
Right. So then it's searching broader. It's saying, okay, here's this idea around boysenberry yogurt that we've got from kind of the RAG component. Now I want to look and say, okay, that looks like it's 18 to 24-year-old, whatever, blah 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 blah, and it puts that together and puts it out. So they're very complementary. But for our space, for the research space, the idea of knowledge management, that is a huge component, and the companies that play in that space, like Lucy, but also Stravito and
Bloomfire.
There's some Bloomfire, Market. My brain's not working, so apologies for that. I try to give a shout out and I screw it up. I'll put it in the notes. Anyway, point is, those companies perform that function of using this type of technology to understand the content in a deeper way. That's not based on tagging and keywords, right? But is based on the content itself, and that's it's important as we look at that particular function. And then the promise of generative AI is now summarize this for me and let me explore different concepts with other information sources connected to this to get to deeper understanding than just here's the info.
Yeah. I love that differentiation too, because I think as all of us who are, we may be tech savvy, but we're not tech experts. And yet we're using this technology now. It's nice to be mindful of the different processes in the platforms that we're using, and what is summaritive and what is generative, and what is coming from our data, what is coming from the world's data. So I just think, it's good for us to all just keep leveling up our knowledge and skills so that we can maximize the effectiveness of the tools we're choosing to use. So
right, it's not magic. So right, I mean, what's the old saying? Any sufficiently advanced technology, it appeared to be magic. It is not.
It is. Feels that way sometimes, maybe, but it
may feel that way sometimes, but it is. It is. Back to was last week before where we had the Wolfram Alpha analysis of or explanation around how large language models really work. And we found that really insightful and interesting. I mean, if this stuff traces its back to text analytics. We've been doing text analytics for years. So exactly. They are growing on a body of technology and experience that has been there for a very long time. And to your point, not experts, somebody who is an expert say, "Oh, Lenny, you garbled that up. That there's so much nuance." I know there's a lot of nuance I missed there, guys.
It's so funny. Yeah. Well, and it feels like, that's the disclaimer on all of this, right? Is, not necessarily, growing our expertise, not necessarily experts according to the experts. So there's a big difference there. So now, I think that the third thing we really want to talk about today is is also interestingly related to all of this, right?
It
And
is.
it's not very clean segue here, so forgive me, folks, but we have been hearing a lot and seeing a lot and reading a lot this week about changing buying behaviors and also social media. So something you were saying earlier, you were talking about like search and all of that. And one of the stats that I'm about to share involves, a new generation using TikTok for their search, which I think is fascinating on one level. But here's what Lenny pulled up this week. Measure Protocol's newest App Life report. So we'll link to this report because I'm sure there's so much we can mine in there. But it challenges assumptions around conventional media consumption habits. TikTok being one of the ones that was studied. Gen Z watching 5,400 videos weekly, like.
Well, it is TikTok, so that may, that could be like an hour, depending
Now,
upon.
the thing is, and I know you're not on TikTok, right? I am on TikTok. Anyway, I don't even
That
want to
black
go
hole
there
holds no appeal for me. So
it is so interesting. Anyway, and dangerous. This week in particular has been really dangerous. And I keep texting people in my family like, I don't know, I just spent too much time on TikTok. Please get off. And they're like, Mom, it's you, not us. It's really kind of hilarious. So anyway, but that generation, two big things. Like one, they're starting to use it as a search engine. So they're going to TikTok to search for topics, which shouldn't be that surprising, knowing that, they might search in the past, they've searched on Twitter or wherever, like they've used social media for search before. But TikTok is a whole different type of content that you're searching through because you have just a barrage of video experts.
Right.
It's interesting.
Talk about fake news, misinformation, disinformation. I mean, how that, with not to get into the political aspect of that at all, but that it's citizen interpretation of information, right? Share that your individual interpretation of information. So
so that's the one thing. So media consumption, and there's a lot of implications. There's plenty of things that we can't really cover too much this week. Maybe we can get to it again about ad spending and what that means for media companies and media buyers and how they're allocating funds and the power of influencers. I mean, Lenny and I could spend an hour talking about all that, but here's what I wanted to dig into is this paradox of online shopping behavior consumer shopping behavior. On the one hand, we're hearing that, total retail, again, we'll share links to articles, shift in shopping behavior due to persistent inflation, right? And price increases, and how it seems that customers are, using cost saving strategies and looking for discounts and kind of changing their purchase behaviors for certain goods. At the same time, a study by Bankrate revealed that this new trend in online shopping is that 39% of US adult social media users collectively spent a staggering $71 billion on impulse purchases on social media, content on social media. I know that I did. I grabbed a really great purple Kate Spade purse thanks to my Instagram feed. So I know that I was victim. It was a really good deal. And there I did it, right? So I understand this. At the same time, we might be talking about, that price of eggs. Remember last year when we were having, pre-chicken for you when you were buying eggs, and so I know I fall victim to this. I just think this is interesting. And it makes me go, about how we're making purchase decisions right now and how influential social media is to things we feel we must need.
Right.
I don't know. I throw that out to you too, because you're not on social media, but I see myself in some of these stats and it's a little unnerving.
Yeah. I am still on Twitter. So, or X.
That's
it. So I do see the ads, and I've done the same thing.
You bought the thing.
I have. There was one. It was like this bathroom cleaner, this foam stuff. It's like, look at that's cool, Danielle, my wife. We should get that. Oh yeah, get that. It's so disappointing.
That's some good grout. Anyway.
Yes. It was like grout cleaner. So and it was a bad decision. But point was the I think it has one. It's the power of social media.
Yeah.
There's certainly lots of conversation that we could get into about brain plasticity and the state of mind that we're in, and endorphins, and all of those things, the
Yeah.
melatonin levels that are all impacted by social media, especially platforms like TikTok.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
uh and the increases impulsiveness. I mean, they're designed to be addictive. That is
Yeah.
what they are designed to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and if we're talking about addiction, we're talking about impulse control.
Yeah.
So um that's not a moral judgment. It's the mechanism of the user experience. That's what they want you to spend more time on there, because they
Yeah.
sell more ads and you buy more stuff, and that's the way it works. That's the way it's
Yeah.
always worked.
Yeah.
The and in that arena, right, as you're worried about inflation and other things, I think it almost starts to fall into um during financial downturns, the categories that are rarely impacted and usually boom
Yeah.
are alcohol,
Yeah.
cosmetics,
Yeah.
chocolate,
Yeah.
things to make you feel better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and we don't even think of it as discretionary spending.
Right.
It's just, you know, I'm doom in this scenario this week. Great
Yeah.
example. I'm doom scrolling. I'm looking at all this
I
crap, and
know. It's
like
really,
I want to unsee it. Like I
I
don't
know.
want to see any of these things. Oh, but look, that that'll make my life easier and better. Sure,
Yeah.
I'm going to go
Yeah.
ahead and get it. Psychologically, it makes an awful lot of sense. It's also a whole other conversation one day, whether it's they're like the data. There's a moral and ethical conversation to be
Well, and
had
then you
here.
think like, so a company like TikTok not only has, what type of content I like and don't like, and we know we feed the algorithms with every step we take. We know that, right? So we know I'm going to like this. Should I like it? TikTok's going to know I liked it. Like we know that our behaviors in the social media or Twitter or whatever, we know they're paying attention to that. But if we're also then making purchases through that,
Mhm.
then they start to have our purchase data. And then the
We
same
go
sort of thing can apply
right back.
where we're running back full circle. See how we tie that with a bow? They have a lot of information
They
about
do.
our purchase decisions. And there are certainly companies that are going to be leveraging that from a retail standpoint. They want placement in the social
Sure,
media sites,
sure.
as they should have them. If that's where people are spending so much time, that makes sense from a media
Yeah.
placement.
Billboard, ad placement, radio. I mean, of course, you
That's a
understand
big
your
deal.
audience
And
and you
then
put the
we put
ad
our
there.
consumers hat on, and it's a little terrifying that they know so much about us. What are we to do?
The I know we're at the top of the hour, but it is interesting that uh and I think I've mentioned this before, but I often would use a clip from the movie Minority Report when I would give talks about the future of research, right?
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
anybody who's ever seen that movie, or if you have seen the movie, you should see the movie.
Yeah.
It is both uh, incredibly exhilarating and totally freaking terrifying
Yeah.
in some respects. And this is the respect. The character is walking through the mall and there's targeted ads popping up to him. Oh, you haven't bought underwear in a
Right.
year. You need new
Right.
underwear,
Right.
right? Um,
We're worried
and
about your hygiene.
right, and that's the promise of big data and social media. And this was, gosh, probably 2010. It's
Right.
fairly 12 early days of talking about these things. Point is that I used to be really excited about it, and I still see the possibilities of doing that in an ethical and moral way that adds value to
Yeah.
people in a fair value exchange.
Yeah.
I believe that is the promise of this idea of our data being on a data exchange, exchanging it with companies
Right.
to deliver more value to me.
Yeah.
That's the gray area that gets lost. The dystopian, the scary part is when it feels like we are simply the product. And unfortunately, in my opinion, in many cases, and uh, some platforms seem to treat us as the product
Yeah. Yeah.
versus as the partner.
Yeah.
I would encourage if you're out there listening, start thinking about us as your partners, and how do you treat your partners.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, and I think we have to start that conversation is going to become bigger and bigger as we go.
Yeah. 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 Well, we'll wrap there because it's time, because we talked for another half an hour. I was just re-listening to our very first episode, and we were talking about how you and I could talk. So,
well, I certainly can. You're better. You're better at talking more succinctly than me. I just kind of ramble, and that's why I'm glad that I have you to rein me in. So.
Well, I'm glad I have you to share some nuggets of wisdom and stimulate our thinking. So that's all for today. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Jaceey, again, and Sonali. I think I responded to you, but it didn't connect with you on LinkedIn. If you're still listening, all of these recordings are available on YouTube. We have a playlist designated for this. And we share that link in our marketing, and I think Lenny can pull it all up online.
Yep. All right. Thank you, everybody. Jaceey, always appreciate you being a faithful listener. And everybody have a wonderful Friday the 13th with a solar eclipse tomorrow, by the way. Talk about a spooky holiday Halloween weekend. So, all right. Everybody be well.
Thank you, Patrick. Good to see you all. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.